Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news, stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific North, fresh from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
Sweet, sweet Mariners.
Before we dive into anything, big ups to the listeners. It's
Yes.
been a wild, wild week in Seattle sports. You know, over the course of the last 2 weeks, really, you've had the Robbie Ray deal, um, sending him to San Francisco, Mitch Haniger coming back. You follow that up with the Seahawks winning their season finale, but getting eliminated from the playoffs. UW losing in the national title game. Pete Carroll getting let go. And then the crux of what we're talking about today, the coaching carousel banana-rama, if you will, in college football that happened as well, which we'll be diving into today. But with all that happening, a lot more listens, and big thank you to everyone that's taken the time to set aside half hour to an hour at a time to listen, and it's greatly appreciated on our end.
It really is. And, we kept checking, kept letting each other know, hey, this is what we're at, this is what we're at. And just the feeling inside. And, talking to my wife, telling her what we're at, and just oh my gosh, good job. And it makes us feel good. It really does. And it's all from you guys. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts here at Kicking It with Coach Red. And we hope that you guys continue to enjoy our content.
And also subscribe to our stuff and interact a little bit too, because eventually maybe we'll even be able to make money at this, which we can give you even
Which would
better
be great.
content. So hit that subscribe button, especially on YouTube. Get us to an area where we can do some stuff. But before we go any further, why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that is true to the purple and gold, that I don't care who the coach is, I'm still going to be there rocking, watching every minute of Husky football. And if you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like me, your boy, Coach Red. You can find me on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. Also, find us over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. And if you're looking for a guy that when it comes to UW football, waits for the bright and shiny lights to come down during the stretch of a magical season and then buys in. But I think that he's got a little bit more buy in now, especially going into next year, even with all the uncertainty. If you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like Cain.
They have the sickest jerseys in college football. So, there's that. Yeah, I'm Kane. You can find me on Twitter at Kane2406, on YouTube at Kane06, TikTok and Kick Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. False. Do it, freaking do it.
So we were just, getting over the fact of Pete Carroll leaving, and then the following day you get news that Bill Belichick is no longer in New England, that Nick Saban is retiring at Alabama, and I had a feeling that Kalen DeBoer was going to be in the running after the magical season he had and the track record of success that he had. There were some other guys that kind of were appealing to Alabama as well. You had Steve Sarkisian, former offensive coordinator there. You had Norvell out of Florida State, especially with them missing the playoff, even though they were undefeated going into the bowl game, and some sanctions coming down from some NIL scandal with his offensive coordinator. Thought that that might be the place to jump. But on Friday, Kalen DeBoer gets announced as the new head coach at Alabama and really sends tidal waves to this UW team. You had a lot of people that were putting their name in for the NFL draft that we expected. Some might have went a little bit earlier because of his departure. The transfer portal has been getting hit almost daily with guys entering the transfer portal, some immediately, and it's even trickled out even to today. And you knew that the Huskies had to jump and find their new coach and get a guy in place quickly. Enter Jedd Fisch. Fisch coming back to Seattle when Pete Carroll took the Seahawks job. Jedd Fisch was his quarterback's coach. And this is a guy that's been a coordinator at a lot of different stops and was a first-time head coach for the Arizona Wildcats and took over a team that had the cupboards bare. First season, I think they had 1 win, and then they finished this season with 10 wins, 3 losses, finished 11 in the AP poll, and their 3 losses were by 7 to us, 7 and 2 points. So very close all year, and he's been known as a guy that can recruit the West Coast, although it might not be a high ranking in the ESPN top 300 metrics. He's been putting good talent in. It's kind of like a little bit reminiscent of what you saw with Chris Peterson in the our kind of guys type of mold, getting guys in the building, building them up. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds.
Right. Yeah, talking to guys at work, and the Kalen DeBoer thing was coming up, and it's like, I don't know. Just for the simple fact of the magical season that had just happened, it seemed like he was really putting his roots into this team, and then he's gone. And outside of Kalen DeBoer, I know Dabo Sweeney, I know Nick
Nick Saban,
Saban, and I also,
Jim Harbaugh.
yeah, Jim Harbaugh. But then, like, the other coach that no longer is a coach was the guy who kicked their kicker in the NFL. Whatever his name is, the old Ohio State guy.
Urban Meyer.
Yeah,
Big
but
college football guy here.
yeah. So now hearing some stuff on Jedd Fisch, took a sorry program and turned them into winners in a sense, right?
I
Being
mean,
11th
they finished 11th in the nation. They're
right,
third in
11th in the nation is that's really good,
for
especially
Arizona football. It's really
right,
good.
and that's in a 3-year span. So let's see if he can retain some of the people that hit the portal, get some people in. That would be fantastic. I guess we'll just see where this goes.
Yeah, and a lot of people felt slighted by Kalen DeBoer, and I get the feeling. And I was upset, but I didn't harbor any hate because it's realistically what NIL transfer portal has really opened this up to with, 1 free transfer up to 2 free transfers for certain reasons. Like it's a pretty wild thing out there. It is, like the Wild West. It's money flying everywhere, and it's tough because for the last 2 years, and some of these guys only even the last year when they transferred in, you build a rapport, you feel invested in their success. This team, there's going to be so many guys, we talked about it in the last episode, that will go down as legends in the Husky program. And some of them are going to go on to their 3rd team in college football, some of them onto their 2nd. And it's tough and it's rough. But the one thing is, there we'll get to the portal guys here in a little bit, but there's a lot of guys that entered their name in the portal that haven't declared where they're going just yet. And there's still an opportunity for Jedd Fisch and his staff to go after and keep these guys home. When Kalen DeBoer took over for Jimmy Lake, you had guys like Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan that were looking at transferring out. They put their name in the portal. They came back. So it's not just because their names are in the portal doesn't mean that the door is not open for them to come back, but it makes it a little bit tougher. I mean, there's so many of these NIL deals that are just being thrown out like crazy. And there's going to be some guys that get a lot of looks from a lot of other programs where they would have stayed with Washington if Kalen DeBoer and company stayed home. And I think that when we get into the staff that Jedd Fisch is bringing with him is part of the reason you've seen some of these later transfers. So for Kalen DeBoer, after Ryan Grubb was passed over for the HC job for the Huskies, is going there. You had a handful of other coaches, but some weren't announced yet, like Jamarcus Shepard, the wide receiver coach, and Scott Huff, the offensive line coach. And with Jedd Fisch, he's bringing his OC up with him. Familiar name in this area. It's Brennan Carroll, Pete Carroll's kid. And has been the offensive coordinator down in Arizona for 2 years, and he's their offensive line coach. So you see Scott Huff leave, and that's when you see the likes of Parker Brazelford and Nate Capello put their name into the transfer portal. So Brendan Carroll brings pedigree. You know that Pete Carroll's going to be around this team, especially now that he's just in and being in an advisory role. I think that you're going to be able to see some extra recruiting because he'll be around the program. You know that. He's been around the program down in Tucson supporting. Jedd Fisch also is under the Belichick tree, work coach with Sean McVay as well, and they've all made their way out to Arizona to help support him. So you know that you're going to get some of that support at Washington as well. And they're bringing another familiar name, tight ends coach Jordan Pow Pow, former tight end coach for UW in the past. But he brings his whole offensive staff with him. He brings the edge coach and their DB coach with them, and their strength and conditioning guy from Arizona, which I was wishing that McKeefery was going to stay. It seemed like the guys just really loved him in the weight room, and he really helped transform a lot of these guys into the prospects that they have become and made this line into what it was, especially when you're looking at the offensive line. So, nothing but respect for the people that made the decision or the decision was made for them. But this is what college football is going to become. It's a churn. It's going to be roster churn all the time. And I think we talked about this right before. I think I tweeted out there that this has been the wildest week, all of these things. But Pete Carroll was kind of involved in the last shift around the Seattle sports because Pete Carroll leaves USC, comes to Seattle. Steve Sarkisian leaves the University of Washington to go to USC, insert Chris Peterson. But the timetable was different. Pete Carroll announced that he was leaving. They bring in Sark. These were all before the bowls happened. I mean, Marcus Tuiasosopo coached the bowl game for us that year and led us to a win. So with it being postseason for the Seahawks, you knew Jim Moore was getting let go the previous time. So Pete Carroll, the day after Black Monday in the NFL, they're parting ways with him as the head coach, really starts this revolving door a little bit later. And Saban's retirement starts this after the national title game. This is unprecedented territory. Hasn't really happened to this scale with these high of a caliber programs, because I think Washington has put themselves in the caliber of a high caliber program
I
with what
agree.
they've done over the course of the last decade under Peterson and DeBoer.
I agree. I mean, you look back at the Jake Browning years and how good that team was, and you know, kind of slumped a little bit, but then Kalen DeBoer came in and absolutely turned the program around. 3 losses in 2 years. I mean, the dude has only lost 14 games. That's insane. And as you said, Alabama, it's tantalizing. It is the destination to be in college football. So I'm not gonna knock the guy for taking the job. It's a chance to get enshrined in a certain legacy, and I think the way that he is, he's gonna succeed, and we're gonna love to see it as just pure football fans. Um, but I'm also excited to see this next chapter of Husky football, especially as you said in the intro. Like I'm gonna start watching them a little bit more.
A lot of it.
A little, I I have a 3-year-old dude. I
That's cool.
can't. I'll try my best, but um, I'm really excited to see what this next chapter looks like.
And it's also, with DeBoer leaving, this also hurts Arizona that's been built up by a guy too. Um, but the allure and resources available to these guys. When you go to Alabama, that Alabama football, that's king.
Way
He's
of life.
it's that's what it is. And the other thing too with Arizona, they've been running a deficit spending. They can only sign coaches for X amount of years based off of Arizona law. So Jedd Fisch gets a raise to come to the University of Washington. He gets more money that's funneled into his football program. So it's a step up. You can't fault them for that. it hurts. It sucks. And I feel gutted for Arizona. And it hurts that I'm going to be rooting for some of their kids to transfer here, especially coming off of a good year. You want to see them going into a new conference as well succeed. But let's get into some holes that we're getting in. There's a total of 33 guys that were either on this Husky roster or were guys that had signed to transfer in that are either graduated, declared for the draft, or re-entered the transfer portal or entered it for the first time. We'll start with the graduated guys. Stellar group here. You got Michael Penix, quarterback supreme, Devin Culp and Jack Westover, your top two tight ends. You got Tuli Latua Gasanoa and Ulo Ale, your two D tackles, both graduating. ZTF off the edge. Ulafoshio, your stud at linebacker. Raylan Goforth, who transferred here from USC, played quite a bit on the defensive side of the linebacking area. And Dom Hampton, who absolutely played his heart out in that national title game and was all over the field. These are all guys that you knew were going, they're out of eligibility. But you also got hit with the draft. I mean, some guys were obvious, but there were some of these other guys that really kind of surprised me a little bit. First one that was a late breaker was Roger Rosengarten, starting right tackle. Wasn't sure if he was going to try and go one more year at UW and improve his stock a little bit more. He decides to go. Obviously, Troy Fant knew he was going. He's being looked at as the top guard prospect off the board, probably going in the first round. Another guy that has saw his stock increase after that Texas game, Braylon Trice, who's going to be a first round, second round contender. Roma Dunze, who's going to be near the top of this draft. Easy choice. Jalen Polk was a little bit of a head scratcher for me, but coming off 1,000-yard season and really breaking out, and without Michael Penix being back at school, I can see him capitalizing on timing. Jalen McMillan was a guy that I thought might stick around, especially because the injury that limited to him only playing about half the season, but his ability out of the slot will find him easy playing time earlier. This is going to be a guy that is going to be second to fourth round, in my opinion, in the draft this year, based off of him coming off of that injury. And I think he's going to make some people pretty happy. And the last one was Dylan Johnson. You could see the wear and tear on his body. You only have so many carries. And I know that he's got a young kid as well. Go get your money in the NFL, dude. You put everything you had on the field, like a lot of these guys, and we have nothing but love for any of the guys that decided to go to the draft early, any of the guys that also that put time in here. I'm totally cool with you hitting the transfer portal. Hope that you come back. If you don't, totally get your decision. You got to do what's best for you. And you signed up to play for a guy. And some of these guys signed up to play, a lot of these guys signed to play for Chris Peterson. And some of these guys signed to play for Jimmy Lake. And then they played for Kalen DeBoer. So you could see that some of that coaching instability can still lead you to the promised land of getting to where you want to go in the ultimate goal of playing for the national title and hopefully winning it next time.
Yep. Yep. And as you said earlier, a lot of players have hit. One that I want to touch on is the quarterback, Clark. He transferred in, or
Will Rogers.
Will Rogers. Yeah.
So there's three guys that we're planning on transferring in. There's still guys that could still do the same. But Will Rogers, quarterback from Miss State. You had Ethan Barr from Vandy and Trey Watson, Fresno State tight end. Trey Watson's the only one that's confirmed to be landed at another school at Texas A&M.
Yeah, and those are the guys that are like, yeah, DeBoer's my guy, and brings out the best in me, and now he's gone, and it's just like I think you're going to see that a lot, I don't know how it's going to really fare, because when you did have DeBoer, it just showed how much he like it. The way I can compare him is like Dan Campbell.
Yeah, he felt like he wanted to run through a wall for him. He just,
yeah,
I don't want to say he seems so genuine because I honestly think that he is a very genuine person. There's a
right.
lot of people that are jilted because team meeting, guys find out beforehand. Welcome to the age of social media. It's tough to keep things under wraps. You also look at the team felt that he put on a little bit of a show, and he never really put out a statement to the fans like you saw Brian Grubb do or Jedd Fisch even to Arizona. A lot's coming at these guys, and it's tough because I do believe that he's genuine. He wanted to stay here. There's only a handful of jobs he would have left for. And when you get that opportunity, how long was Saban at Alabama for? He's in his
19
prime. He
years.
could stay there for a long, 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 long time. So I get
19
it.
years. Yeah.
But you talked about Will Rogers. Will Rogers was still with the team. He was there when Jedd Fisch arrived on campus and introduced himself to the team. But you put yourself in real quarterback purgatory. They do not have a scholarship guy on staff right now at the quarterback position. You had Dylan Morris, who you knew was transferring even before, he said, I'm going to go into the portal. They wanted to keep him throughout the run because of how important he's been to this team. He ends up signing with James Madison. You got Will Rogers, who was set to come in to be that bridge quarterback before you turn it over to Austin Mack. Austin Mack is in the transfer portal as well. The only guy that you do have that's coming in is DeMarcus Davis. He was a guy that was also in the running to go to Arizona. So you feel pretty confident about that. But you also have some guys from Arizona that could be intriguing. Obviously, Noah Fifta is the big name out there. A guy that was recruited by Fisch is someone who I've heard should be an early Heisman better next year, like betting guy. I would say he's probably top 10, top 15 type of guy. And I said that even before Jedd Fisch was coming here. So there's a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback
That
position
was the quarterback that came in for their starting guy
for
because the
Jaden DeLore.
starter got
Correct.
injured.
His first start was against UW, played a great game. Then the following week goes into double OT versus USC. So he's a guy that really propelled himself into that starting job and caused Jaden DeLora to transfer again. Other news out of, I didn't write his name down because he's not the big name, but the highest rated prospect that Arizona recruited last year was a quarterback, and he entered into the transfer portal today. So it'll be interesting to see where his journey takes him, whether he's a 1 year older guy that's been in the system that comes up here, if Noah Fifta still gets in there. Um, we'll see. But some of the other big names, we already kind of talked about some of the linemen. You had Capello and Brailsford go in. Brailsford really came on strong this year, came in for Mateo Mele, and just really was an anchor at the center position. I know that he's going to be getting looks from every major program in the nation with how he was able to ascend and only being a redshirt freshman. He's got a lot of time left. But a room that was hit pretty hard was the defensive backs room. You had Javion Green, who started some games for us, had some significant playing time for this team over the last 2 years. He's transferring to Stanford. Asa Turner, safety. He's been banged up the last couple of years. Played in the national title game this year. His name's in the portal. Mish Powell, former walk-on, had the pick six to win the game against Arizona State. He's in the portal. Top name though is Jabbar Muhammad. Jabbar Muhammad was quick into the transfer portal. Quick. And then another guy, I think it's Dyson McCutcheon, also on that list of DBs that have put their name in the portal, and one
Five,
has committed
six.
elsewhere.
That's a lot.
The one saving grace is there are a lot of guys that seem to be pretty hyped about the Fisch signing. One of them is a guy that in last year's recruiting cycle was a late flip from Morgan, and that's local kid Caleb Presley. Caleb Presley is saying we reeled in a big fish, and for thanking everybody at the beginning, it got me off of doing a whole lot of fish puns throughout this episode. So it's either you're welcome or sorry you didn't get to hear him. But he seems to be one of the guys that is really sitting there and championing for guys to stick around, and it seems like he is going to stick around. So there other bigger named guys on this list. Dylan Morris, where he touched on the wide receiver room, Jimmy Bernard and Tayshawn Lyons. Tayshawn Lyons, a little bit lower on the depth chart. He's already committed to Utah. Jimmy Bernard got significant playing time when Jalen McMillan was out and was a guy that transferred here from Michigan State last year. So be interesting to see if he wants to stick around. But you also have another McMillan that could be high on this priority list, and that's guy at Arizona. I'm going to butcher this name.
Oh,
Tatoria McMillan. And he ended the season fifth in receiving yardage in all of college football. So it's he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he absolutely is a stud. And it's going to be interesting to see what the whole offensive staff that's coming here, especially when you look at one starting offensive lineman not graduating or not in the transfer portal, and your wide receiver room gutted, what eventually makes its way north from Arizona. And kind of looking at some of the kids that are on this team right now, the Hatchet brothers, Garyon and Landon. Landon was a low-key center prospect. So if Brailsford decides to leave, I feel okay with that, having the two brothers next to each other. They were both top 300 recruits, or damn near close to it. I think Landon was like the sleeper pick for guy that could outplay his star ranking when it came to our last recruiting class. But there's just a whole boatload of turnover on this team, and you knew it was going to happen when DeBoer accepted the job. You
yep,
know that in Arizona, you're resigned to the fact that changes are going to happen. A lot of guys that you were anticipating watching and having a season with and another season and going on that ride, it's not going to happen exactly how you expected. But
right.
you can't always just sit on the top. You know, you could if you were Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, but if you weren't following that team, you hated to see it. Just
Mhm.
like you kind of got tired of Nick Saban being there every year, kind of got a little bit tired of Dabo Sweeney when they were competing for national titles. Felt good at the beginning, but you kind of get that aura where it's like, okay, like I've heard enough about these programs. I want it to be my program, and that's what happened this year. And it was so fun to be able to talk to casual fans and have them understand a little bit more of what we were talking about and recognizing the players, recognizing some of these coaches. And I think that will happen again. It's just it's a reset, and sometimes it sucks.
And to be honest, man, Washington should be an tantalizing job. Just think about how much talent the Huskies have put out into the NFL for many years. They've put out first round, second round studs. You know, there's been some flops here and there, but
As with everything.
right. But all this team has ever done is pop out talent, and people love coming to play for the Huskies. They talk about, you know, after their time, they talk about the fans and just campus life and how great it was. And you know, most of the time when you play for the Huskies, you get immortalized into that school.
Yeah,
So
I mean, speaking of that, one guy that I don't think we talked about yet that could fill some of these positions. I will say this: Kalen DeBoer has not brought over either of his co-defensive coordinators with him to Alabama as this is taping. So they met with Fisch, and Fisch is bringing two defensive guys with him, and one guy that I would kind of like to see that was kind of getting vocal. He's I'm not sure his exact role at Utah, but it's former UW linebacker Cort Dennison. This guy was an absolute monster at the linebacker position and just was pouring out, not being in the same division as them anymore, with Utah going to the Big 12 and UW going to the Pac-10. He's like, oh, I hope they nail this hire. Bring him back. If you're looking for a guy that's got roots to this team, granted you got Pow Pow coming in at the tight end spot, but Cort Dennison's a guy that's on the field and really wants to go get it. And if we want to talk about it a little bit more, a lot of the talk is Jedd Fisch doesn't stay at places very long. He's only been a head coach at Arizona. I think we said that at the beginning. Is a guy that has one of the quirkiest stories. Didn't play college football at all. This guy was pre-law. I think Mitch Levy came out with a story about Jedd Fisch today, brought it to light, where Jedd Fisch pre-law wanted to get to the OJ trial, too many people are in there. So he sneaks in with OJ's lawyer, and they turn around and like, who are you? Jedd Fisch, pre-law, Florida. I think he got let in the building. So it's a guy that's persistent. He's not your typical football guy. He doesn't look like your typical football guy, but he's done wonders. He's been at a ton of programs where he's worked with a lot of good coaches and established great offenses at those schools, a la Arizona. So you look at that. You look at bringing in uh, Brennan Carroll, as a guy that it hurt to lose for the Seahawks. He was on his dad's staff, but it's exciting for him to get his shot and to see the rise of Arizona football, for him to be a part of that and now get to coach in the same town as his dad at and now the light's on him a little bit more. It'll be
Super
we
cool.
couldn't go without having a Carroll in the building.
It's super cool, to be honest. And let's see what schemes he draws up.
And where I was really ultimately getting with this is I'd love to see what Jedd Fisch's buyout is, because if the Florida job comes open, it's alma mater. If they come a calling, he's out the door. What I want to see is a guy that I did state his name earlier is Marcus Tuiasosopo. I believe he's the defensive coordinator down with UCLA right now with Chip Kelly. The next time this job becomes available, I want a hard look at a guy that's been in the game for a while. It is dedicated to the game and loves UW football. I want this to be that person's dream job, because you can say it's the dream job. I think that even if Tuiasosopo got offered some other bigger gigs as an HC, I think that he's going to stay at home. He's got roots in this area, big family tradition with the University of Washington. And if you want to have a guy in the building that bleeds purple and gold, it's a guy like Tuiasosopo. And I'd love to see, the Cort Dennisons of the world come back. Jermaine Kearse has flirted around a little bit with some stuff, maybe bringing him as a wide receiver coach and get that loyal to the soil and keeping the commits and big ballers in the state of Washington here and make it an attractive program. You're going to be competing with the likes of Oregon, UCLA, and USC out here on the West Coast being in the Big Ten. Those are going to be your big rivals. I think with Cal and Stanford going to the ACC, it's going to hurt tremendously for their ratings. It's going to hurt for their exposure as well, unless they can create a couple of big upsets against the blue bloods of Florida State and Clemson in that division. But when you get kind of into that Mountain West territory, Arizona and Arizona State kind of had their ups and downs. Colorado has the allure of Coach Prime, and Whittingham does nothing but win at Utah. But it wasn't that long ago that Colorado and Utah were in the Big 12 or were in the Mountain West and weren't part of the pack. So, and when you look at Arizona State, yeah, they've had some really good football programs, but it's really up and down and inconsistent. And Arizona's mainly looked at as a basketball school. So when it comes to football on the West Coast, you're going to be playing at different timetables than you were before. You're going to have some of those 10 a.m. starts. You're going to have more eyes. So being able to put a product out there to show the West Coast is the best coast, you come to the Pacific North fresh, because we're ready. And you get to go up against those marquee programs like we've talked about: Penn State, Michigan State, the Ohio State,
That's true.
Wisconsin.
Yep.
These are big name programs that are here. Iowa and their stingy ass defense. Like, build upon what DeBoer put in place and go from there. And the proof's going to be in the pudding. You might not see it next year. That's going to be the tough part for everyone to imagine. You did see a big exodus. You had a veteran heavy team. You had some 6-year players, 5 and 6-year players that were really leading this team forward. You knew that they weren't going to be back. You knew that there were going to be some holes to fill, and you felt pretty good about some of the guys they were bringing in. But as is with everything, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be
Yep.
real crazy.
Yep. Definitely going to be a long off season.
And during that long off season, if you want a little bit of info from us, hit us up on social media. You can find me, your boy, Coach Red, on X at the real Coach Red,
So
on
dope.
Instagram at the real _Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. And also find us over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. Cain, where you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Kane2406, on YouTube at Kane06, TikTok and Kick, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
And as always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.